When I was 18 years old, I was told I wasn't the real young master. My brother traveled thousands of miles back home, all for one reason: to sleep with me. He forcefully shattered the boundary that defined us as brothers, and kept me under his control for an entire year. He no longer treated me with the cold indifference he once did. Instead, he kept me confined by his side. Before long, he announced our engagement. No amount of persuasion could change his mind. When his parents opposed him, he stripped them of their authority, and became the sole decision-maker of the Liu family. The real young master threw tantrums and caused a scene, so he cut off all his credit cards, and warned him that if he continued, he would be sent back. I couldn't accept being together with my brother. I tried to run away many times, but he always caught me and brought me back. It felt like being trapped in an inescapable net. There was no way to escape. Up until about 2 weeks ago, he drove late at night to get the cake I had been craving, and ended up in a car accident. When he woke up, he couldn't remember anything. Lejia excitedly introduced me to him, but didn't mention that I was the one he had been madly in love with. Only said I was the housekeeper of the family. They wanted to take advantage of his memory loss to send me away. Li's parents handed me a check. Call it 100 million. Now that Cheese has lost his memory and doesn't remember you, quickly take the money and leave. We used to support you before. Even if we beg you, you must never appear in front of him again. Don't let him find you ever again. I stayed silent for a long time, before slowly agreeing. I will complete all the procedures for going abroad within 2 weeks. Never coming back again. Taking that weightless check. This year felt like a ridiculous dream to me. They wanted me to leave. And honestly, I did want to go. This past year, Liu Zhisher truly spoiled me to the core. But this kind of forceful and domineering love, I just can't bear it. Now he's lost his memory. This is my only chance to walk away from him. What are you all doing? Just at that moment, the main door was pushed open. Standing at the entrance was Lu Ji, with Lu Xiaoyu following closely behind. She was dressed in a sharp suit, looking dashing and refined. An overwhelming sense of authority filled the space. The air seemed to freeze in place. Li's father and mother's expressions froze. His expression shifted, and he quickly forced a smile. It's nothing. Just giving some instructions to the housekeeper. I lowered my gaze, clutching tightly onto the $1 billion check. Just as I was about to turn and head back to the housekeeper's room, I froze. His voice, cold as ice, cut through the air. The sound of leather shoes tapping against the floor grew closer. In the next moment, my chin was forcefully lifted by him. I was compelled to meet his deep, piercing gaze. My breathing grew unsteady and shaky. Images involuntarily surfaced in my mind, of those moments when he pinned me against the floor-to-ceiling window, pressed me onto the bed, and even leaned me against the kitchen counter. He ran his fingertip along my chin. His gaze was cold and piercing. What perfume are you wearing? I parted my lips slightly, about to respond. Don't wear it again next time. He let go of me. His tone was filled with disgust. A nanny should stick to doing a nanny's job. Stop trying to seduce people. She used to always like burying her face in my neck. She would smile and ask me what perfume I was wearing. It smells so good. I shook my head. I told her I wasn't wearing any perfume. She bit my earlobe and laughed softly near my ear, saying the scent was so pleasant. Look, you were truly born for me. You are not allowed to leave me. Wherever you run to, I will find you there. I once thought I could never escape, but this time, fate has given me a chance. I neither explain to him, nor do I argue with him. I simply nod in acknowledgement. The young master saw him turn around and enter the study. I let out a sigh of relief. I was just about to go back and pack my luggage, but Lu Xiaoyu suddenly rushed over and slapped me hard across the face. He screamed at me, saying I was shameless, that I had tried to seduce his brother before, and now that his brother had lost his memory, I was still trying to get close to him. Let me tell you this, my brother already has a fiancée. The reason will be announced soon. This sister-in-law is 1,000 times better than you, even 10,000 times better. I felt a slight shiver. The fiancé, yes, he's lost his memory now. Given the Liu family's status, it's certain that there is no shortage of suitors, but this no longer has anything to do with me. Yet Kola Xiaoyu still refuses to let me go. He shouted sternly for someone to come over. Catch him immediately. Throw him into the cold storage. Let him understand the consequences of trying to seduce my brother. The bodyguards exchanged uneasy glances. No one dared to make a move, because everyone knew how much Liu Zhisher used to indulge me. At that moment, the study door suddenly swung open. Liu Zhisher walked out with a frown. What's all this commotion about? Lu Xiaoyu immediately put on a flattering smile. He was inefficient in handling matters. I want to punish him by sending him to the cold storage. but these bodyguards refused to listen to me. Lu Zhisher cast a cold glance at the bodyguards. His voice was icy. What benefits did he offer you, that even the master's words are ignored? He looked at me, his eyes filled with disgust. Hurry up and take it off. Don't be an eyesore here. With that, he slammed the door shut. Thanks to Lu Zhisher's words, the bodyguards immediately stopped hesitating. I closed my eyes, letting the bodyguards drag me away. I've been afraid of the cold since I was a child, so Lu Zhisher always kept the villa warm like spring all year round. At night, my hands and feet are ice cold. He would even humble himself to hold my feet close to his chest and keep them warm for me. But now he has personally ordered to confine me here as punishment. The cold pierces through to the bone. I curl up in a corner, and my consciousness gradually fades. It's okay, just endure it for a while. Soon, I'll be able to leave. Soon, I will be able to return to being myself, instead of being treated as the private property of Lu Zhisher. When I woke up again, what I saw was the glaring white of a hospital room. The television in the ward was broadcasting the news. Lu TV and Story Group officially announced their union today. Mr. Lu Zhisher and Mr. Gu Luoyin will hold their wedding next month. In the footage, Lu Zhisher was dressed sharply in a suit. His face was stern and emotionless. Gu Luo was holding his arm. Her smile was radiant. That very afternoon, I completed the expedited procedures for going abroad. The visa could be processed in as little as 2 weeks. The staff returned my ID card. Wishing you a pleasant journey. Stepping out of the embassy, I let out a deep breath. Sunlight spilled across my face. A long-lost sense of ease washed over me. I returned to the villa. The entire way, my mind was occupied with plans for arrangements abroad. I walked into the living room with a cup of tea in hand, and noticed there was someone new. I recognized them at a glance. It was Gu Ruoying, who was set to marry Lu Zhisher. Li's father, mother, and their youngest daughter were all gathered around him. They were cheerfully discussing the wedding with bright smiles on their faces. Lu Zhisher was seated quietly to the side, without speaking, simply listening quietly. I lowered my head and brought the tea over. Gu Ruoying glanced at me. She smiled softly all of a sudden. The scalding tea spilled all over him. I hadn't even had time to react. Lu Zhisher slapped me across the face. You did that on purpose, didn't you? I stood there frozen. Only then did I realize it was all part of their setup. Then I heard his cold voice. Take them away and double their punishment. He picked up Gu Luoyin in his arms, headed upstairs, called a private doctor. I didn't even get a chance to explain myself before being dragged out by 2 bodyguards. The night outside the villa was dark and heavy. Lu Xiaoyu held a barbed cane, her face filled with excitement and malice. Finally, it's in my hands. He raised the cane and struck down with force. The first strike left the skin torn open. This one is for stealing my identity. The second strike left the flesh mangled. This one is for provoking my brother. This one is for your lack of self-awareness. Why don't you scream now? Where's your voice? My brother won't be helping you this time. Biting down hard on my lip, refusing to let myself make a sound. But the thorns on the vine dug into my flesh. Each strike felt like it was tearing me apart. Blood trickled down my back, arms, and legs, dripping onto the ground drop by drop. All 99 times in total. Lu Xiaoyu lashed harder and harder, until the final whip landed, and I could no longer hold on, lying in a pool of blood. When I regained consciousness, I realized I was locked inside a warehouse. The wound on my back had scabbed over. Moving even slightly caused sharp pain. I forced myself to crawl up. Knocking on the door, I heard the bodyguard's cold voice from outside. Young master, you said you haven't learned your lesson. You'll remain confined. No food or water for 3 days. The young master agreed as well. I curled up in the corner. The wound stung with a fiery pain. Not long after, the door opened. An alpha reeking of sour stench walked in. His clothes were in tatters. His hair was tangled in greasy strands. His grin revealed yellowed teeth. Hey there, little beauty. He lunged toward me. I screamed and dodged away. I grabbed the desk lamp and hurled it. He cursed under his breath. A slap landed across my face. How dare you disobey? Young master, you declared. Tonight, I can do as I please. Just as he was about to succeed, my hand found the vase on the nightstand. With a loud crash, the vase shattered against his head. He collapsed to the ground. I broke free from the restraints. Stumbling, I rushed out the door. The hallway was deserted. Barefoot, I ran as fast as I could. I pushed open a slightly ajar door, and quickly hid inside. The room was shrouded in darkness. I held my breath, and quietly slipped into some clothes. Just as I was about to leave, the door swung open. Gu Luoying stood at the doorway. Her smile froze on her face. Her pupils contracted. She rushed over and slapped me across the face. "Why are you here? Aren't you supposed to be with the beggars? How can you be so shameless?" Still trying to seduce. His cheek burned with a stinging pain. Just as I was about to explain, he covered my mouth with his hand. He told the guards at the door to take me away. 2 guards immediately grabbed me and escorted me out. The moment I was dragged out of the room, I glanced back at Guluoin. He removed his jacket, wearing only a shirt. He leaned into Lu Jisher's embrace, and in his sleep, he wrapped his arms around her waist. When I was dragged back home by the bodyguards, I no longer had the strength to stand upright. Before I could even step inside, Lu Xiaoyu blocked my way with a mocking sneer. "Hui Ying's sister-in-law said you tried to seduce my brother again last night. You really have some luck. That beggar was drugged with a strong dose by me, yet you still managed to escape." Then my arms were roughly twisted behind my back. Lu Xiaoyu raised her hand. A slap landed across my face. I had no idea how many times I was hit. Eventually, everything went dark before my eyes. I lost all awareness of what was happening. The next day, I was jolted awake by a splash of cold water. Before I could gather my thoughts, I was pinned down by bodyguards and taken straight to the hospital. Lu Jisher stood in the hallway. His expression was grim. "Luoyin needs a blood transfusion. Only your blood type matches." A shock ran through me. "I stayed silent as long as you're willing. No matter how much money it takes, it's fine." He wrote a check and tossed it onto me. When I didn't react, he wrote an even bigger one and threw it at my face. "Is that enough?" "I don't want any money." I finally spoke up. My voice was so soft it was barely audible. "I just want to leave. I've left the Lu family. I hope you don't come looking for me in the future." He seemed to hear something funny. "If you want to leave, just go ahead. Why would I want to look for you? You're nothing more than a servant. The Lu family has plenty of people like you." I breathed a sigh of relief. "All right, I'll go. The young master always keeps his word. Don't forget what you said today." When the nurse checked on me, her frown deepened more and more. "Mr. Li's body is extremely frail. There are still many injuries. He might go into shock." Lu Jisher stood nearby. His gaze was icy cold. "No matter how big the risk is, I only care that Luoyin is safe." After the blood draw, my vision went dark. I couldn't even stand on my feet. He waited outside the emergency room. His mind was entirely on Guluoyin. He didn't even glance at me. I steadied myself against the wall and walked out. I paused for a moment when I reached his side. I gave him one last look. "Goodbye, Luji." His mind was entirely focused on Guluoyin, who was in the operating room. This time, I left without taking anything. I headed straight to the airport. I closed my eyes. I suddenly remembered something from a long time ago. He held me tightly in his arms. He whispered in my ear, calling me Luku. He said, "You can't escape. In this life or the next, you will always be mine." Back then, his hands were so warm. It felt like they could trap me forever. Now I've escaped. I no longer belong to him. The light in the operating room stubbornly glowed at the end of the hallway. Luji's knuckles pressed against the cold wall, listening to the pounding of his own heartbeat. He couldn't figure out where this restlessness was coming from. It felt as though something important was slipping away through his fingers. The cigarette pack in his pocket was repeatedly crushed. The metal casing showed signs of crumpling. It wasn't until the third cigarette was shaken out that he realized his fingertips were trembling. The moment the flame leaped up, the sharp sting of nicotine flooding his lungs made him frown. Suddenly, an image crashed into his mind without warning. A hand with defined knuckles held a half-burnt cigarette, pausing under the angry gaze of a young boy. He wore a white shirt with accessories, golden eyes, fine hair smeared with a bit of cream, as if just stepping out of a dessert shop. "Brother, you're smoking again." The young boy frowned. His voice carried a mix of disapproval and worry. He looked up and met a blurred yet familiar face. The boy's lips moved silently, still saying something, but he couldn't make out the words. Only felt that those eyes were dazzlingly bright, yet they could see through all his darkest thoughts. In the memory, he was staring at the boy's lips. His gaze was obscure and unreadable, but in the end, he just stayed silent and did nothing. "Don't smoke again." The boy's face in the memory remained blurry, yet clearly remembered his slightly furrowed brows, and the faint upward lilt at the end of his words. He suddenly snatched the cigarette from his fingers, thrown onto the ground, stomped on furiously as if venting anger. Did you hear that? It was truly odd during moments of joy. Clearly, he had never allowed any man to come within 3 meters of him, let alone tolerate anyone taking away his cigarette. Yet the version of himself in the scene merely watched him quietly, letting him reach out and snatch away the cigarette from between his fingers. When the pad of his finger brushed across the lines of his palm, There was even a fleeting moment of daze. The burning sensation from his fingertips jolted him back to reality. Lu Zhisher stared blankly at the falling ash. A surge of indescribable irritation welled up in his chest. Strangely, Lu Xiaoyu had never concerned herself with his smoking, and she certainly wouldn't have addressed him as brother in that tone. As for Gu Luoyin, he would never do that either. So who was this young man? The more he thought about it, the more his head throbbed. It felt as though something was rampaging through his mind, trying to break free from its restraints. He raised his hand to press against his temple. His knuckles turned pale from the pressure. "Sir, smoking is not allowed here." A nurse passing by frowned and reminded him. He was just about to speak, when the roar of an engine suddenly came from outside the window. A silver passenger plane was piercing through the clouds, its tail fin carving a sharp arc against the sunset. For some reason he couldn't explain, his chest suddenly ached intensely, as if someone had forcefully twisted it. His face turned pale. A wave of panic surged through his entire body. He didn't even have time to think, instinctively pulling out his phone, intending to instruct someone to investigate the information about that plane. "Mr. Lu." The door to the operating room suddenly opened. The doctor came out briskly, interrupting his movements. Lu Zhisher's fingers froze in midair. After a moment, he slowly lowered his phone, then turned around and walked toward the doctor. In a deep voice, he asked how is he. "Mr. Gu is now out of danger, but he needs to rest and recover." The doctor wiped his forehead. Thankfully, the blood transfusion was done in time. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. Lu Zhisher nodded slightly. It should have been checked out directly. How is Gu Luoyin doing now? Yet his gaze involuntarily drifted toward the window again. That plane had already disappeared without a trace, but it felt as if his heart had been carried away by that plane. Something of great importance, hollow and empty. No matter what, it couldn't be filled. The doors of the operating room burst open. The sound of the stainless steel gurney rolling across the floor, sharp and piercing, echoed clearly. Gu Luoyin's pale face was tinged with a fragile blush. She had just been wheeled out, but she struggled to lift her trembling fingertips, reaching weakly in the direction of Lu Zhisher. Lu Zhisher almost mechanically stepped forward to hold her hand. Warmth spread from her palm, yet it could not dispel the lingering chill. The inexplicable unease in his chest lingered. When the nurse pushed the gurney into the ward, he heard his own slightly hoarse voice. "How did you fall?" Gu Luoyin's eyelashes trembled faintly, as if recalling something terrifying. He murmured softly, "I don't know either. It felt like I stepped on something. I slipped and fell all of a sudden." He paused for a moment, glanced at Laji's face which showed no expression, then cautiously added, "I think I remember, but it seems he once brought marbles back from outside. Maybe he accidentally dropped it there." After saying that, he quickly shook his head, forcing a faint smile. "However, I must have remembered it wrong. Coco isn't that kind of person. How could he intentionally try to harm me? No matter how much he resents my engagement to you, would never do such a thing. After all, if I had really fallen badly, maybe he didn't finish his sentence." Tears began to fall again. Luji slightly furrowed his brows, hadn't spoken yet. The door of the hospital room was suddenly pushed open. Kolo rushed in like a whirlwind, clearly overheard Gu Ruoying's words, immediately let out a cold chuckle. "Did I remember it wrong? I think he did it on purpose." He walked over to the bedside. The voice was sharp. "But that woman was already trying to seduce you before. Now that she sees you're about to marry brother Luoyin, she's consumed with jealousy. It's no surprise she would do something like this." Lu Zhisher's gaze darkened slightly, but he didn't respond, then suddenly brought up Xiaoyu. "Has it always been just the two of us brothers in our family?" Lu Xiaoyu's face froze for a moment. Her fingers instinctively tightened around the strap of her bag. She quickly forced a smile again. "Of course, brother. Why are you asking this all of a sudden?" Lu Ji rubbed his temples. The throbbing pain at his temples made him feel an inexplicable irritation deep down. "Suddenly thought of something today. It seems like someone called me brother." Lu Xiaoyu's breathing was perfectly synchronized. Immediately let out an exaggerated "oh." Quickly walked over to stand next to Gu Luoyin, easily wrapped her arm around his and said, "Brother, you're so confused. That person is none other than brother Luoyin. Before you lost your memory, you spoiled her so much. Back then, brother Luoyin would hear brother from her all the time. You always cater to his every whim. Even I feel a twinge of jealousy." Gu Luoyin immediately grasped Lu Zhisher's hand. Her voice was soft and tender. "Honestly, it doesn't really matter. You've only lost your memory. I don't hold it against you." His eyes suddenly turned red. His tone was filled with grievance and choked with emotion, yet still forgiving. "But I have faith. Deep down, you still have feelings for me. Isn't that right? And as long as you want to, The indifference and distance you've shown me during this time, I can pretend it never happened. Lu Ji's temples started throbbing intensely. The boy in his memory who snatched away his cigarette began to overlap with the tear-streaked Gu Luoyin in front of him, gradually merging together. For some reason, he couldn't shake off the strange feeling deep inside. A slight furrow in the brows revealed hesitation. Gu Luo noticed his wavering with sharp intuition. She immediately let out a soft hum. Clutching her side, she frowned slightly. My wound hurts a little. He tilted his face upward. His eyes carried a mix of hope and a hint of pleading. Could you go and get me some pineapple cakes? From that shop you used to buy from often. Eating something sweet might lift my spirits a bit. The term Logi 11 syndrome pineapple pastry, like a key sliding into a lock. A sudden sharp pain pierced his temple at that moment. An image abruptly flashed through his mind. He was standing in line at the entrance of a dessert shop, holding an elegant paper box in his hand. After getting home, the boy eagerly opened it. Taking a bite, he squinted his eyes in satisfaction, tilted his head back and smiled at him. A few crumbs clung to the corner of his lips. Didn't realize the version of myself in my memories. Instinctively reached out and wiped it clean for him. Held back for a long time and refrained from kissing him. He closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them again, the doubt in his eyes had been suppressed. Maybe he really remembered it wrong. He nodded and turned to walk out the door. Lu Ji didn't notice Lu Xiaoyu and Gu Luoyin. At the moment he turned, they exchanged a glance. A trace of triumphant laughter flickered in their eyes. When the glass door of the dessert shop was pushed open, the wind chime let out a crisp sound. Lu Jisher stood in front of the counter. He looked at the empty shop with some surprise. The long queues of the past. Today, not a single person was there. The shop assistant recognized Mr. Lu. Their eyes lit up with excitement. A familiar face appeared behind the counter. Take out the beautifully packaged pineapple cake. You came at just the right time today. A fresh batch has just come out of the oven. Lu Jisher took the paper box in hand. Fingertips touched the warm packaging. A sudden inexplicable flutter in the heart. Is it for your boyfriend again today? The shop assistant searched for an item for you, all the while smiling and asking, why has it been so long since you last came by? Didn't you used to come here every week before? Lu Ji paused for a moment. She lifted her eyes to look at the clerk. I used to come here this often. The clerk seemed a bit surprised. Yes, sometimes you come alone, and sometimes you bring your boyfriend along. You've been doing this for many years now, never missing it, no matter the weather. You must care deeply for your boyfriend. I remember there was once a heavy rainstorm. You still lined up to buy pineapple cakes for him. Lu frowned slightly. Seemed like he wanted to ask something else. Suddenly, a few customers rushed into the store. The staff hurriedly said, hope to see you again next time, then turned to attend to other customers. He stood at the entrance of the store holding the pineapple cakes. Scenes from earlier kept flashing through his mind. In his memory, he really did often stand here in line, yet there always seemed to be a blurry figure by his side. That person would stand on tiptoe to peek over the counter. They would tug on his sleeve and whisper softly, I only want the freshly baked ones. When it came time for him to pay, he would take the bag containing the pineapple cakes, eagerly opening it to take a bite. Yet no matter how hard one looked, his face remained impossible to discern. He kept his gaze fixed on the pineapple cake in his hand. A sudden tightness in the chest turned into a sharp pain. Upon returning to the hospital, the door to the ward was slightly ajar. Muted voices of a conversation deliberately hushed came from inside. Lei really left. I heard about the surgery I underwent yesterday. At least now my brother has finally lost his memory. It's truly nothing serious. The voices inside were so low they were barely audible. The fragmented words made it hard for him to catch the full conversation. At that moment, Kola instinctively softened her steps. After my brother lost his memory, I don't understand that despicable Chin Lei. Not only did he refuse to let go, but he also treated me like that. I'm annoyed. Just don't talk about it. Anyway, he's already gone, and he will never come back. The last sentence rang clearly in his ears. Lu Jisher's hand froze midair. His heart suddenly began pounding intensely. He flung the door open abruptly. The conversation in the hospital room came to an immediate halt. Gu Luoyin and Lu Xiaoyu both turned their heads simultaneously. Their expressions shifted slightly. Gu Luoyin quickly adjusted his demeanor. A gentle smile appeared on his face. You're back. Lu Jisher's gaze swept between the two of them. His voice was calm. What were you talking about? It's nothing significant. Gu Luoyin calmly responded. That's all. I just heard the nurse mention that Coco seems to have left the hospital. Apparently, it's because they're planning to go abroad. Lu Zhisher's fingers unconsciously tightened. The pineapple cake box was slightly deformed from being squeezed. It felt as though an invisible hand was clutching his heart tightly. The pain made his breath hitch for a moment, yet his expression remained entirely unchanged. And also, brother Li Xiaoyu, the words of Gu Ruoying. A somewhat sharp voice interrupted his train of thought. I was just asking Ruoying bro, after you lost your memory, you've been so indifferent to him, is he truly not upset about it? Then Ruoying bro said that as long as you're okay, that's all that matters. Look at Lu Xiaoyu's exaggerated reaction of amazement. She clumsily gave a playful wink. A man this good is nearly impossible to find, even with a lantern in hand. Brother, you really need to cherish this, Lu Ji casually responded with a vague acknowledgement. His mind, however, kept replaying the thought that Coco was about to leave the country and would never come back again. Was that referring to him as well? Ji sure. Gu Luoyin keenly noticed his absent-mindedness and cautiously asked, is it because Coco's departure is upsetting you? Lu Ji suddenly snapped back to reality. His brows furrowed deeply. What nonsense are you talking about? He caused you to get hurt, and now he runs away so quickly. He got off easy. The moment those words left his mouth, it felt like a needle had pricked his heart. But his face didn't show the slightest hint of emotion. Gu Luoyin visibly breathed a sigh of relief. Reaching out, she tugged at his sleeve. It's okay, aren't I perfectly fine right now? As long as we live well together in the future, that's enough. Stop thinking about him anymore. All right. After a moment of silence, Li Ji nodded. She gave a slight nod, but when Gu Luoyin leaned against his shoulder with satisfaction, his gaze involuntarily drifted toward the window. Outside, the clouds stretched into a long, drawn-out shape. It resembled the trace left behind by an aircraft's tail fin. The emptiness in his heart seemed to grow even larger. The sunlight in Australia is always exceptionally bright. Luca pushed open the window of the apartment, letting the cool sea breeze brush against his cheeks. He took a deep breath. The air carried a faint scent of salt and flowers, completely different from the city in his memory that was always cloaked in relentless rain, so utterly distinct. How are you feeling today? The voice of Xia Zishi came from behind him. As the soft click of the lock turning echoed, he turned his head and saw him walk in holding a bouquet of fresh sunflowers. The golden petals gleamed brightly under the sunlight. Feeling much better, he accepted the bouquet. His fingertips lightly brushed against the soft petals. The wound hardly hurt anymore. Xia Zishi placed the flowers in a vase, skillfully trimming the stems and leaves. Over the course of these 2 months, he brings a different flower every day. Sometimes it's daisies, other times it's roses. Today, it's sunflowers. He never says anything sentimental. He just quietly places the flowers by his bedside, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Aren't you planning to open a dessert shop? I looked into a few good locations. He said this while arranging the flowers. Once your health improves a bit more, we can go and take a look. Lu eagerly gazed at his profile. A warm feeling surged in her heart. When he had just left his home country, he was like a bird startled by the mere twang of a bow. Even after getting the money and a new identity, he still couldn't feel at ease. During the 2 days in France, he hardly got any sleep. It always feels like someone might burst through the door at any moment and take him back. The plane ticket for his trip abroad was bought by Lu Jia back then, so they knew he would be heading to France. This feeling of having his approximate location under someone else's control filled him with fear. He moved from one country to another again and again, until he eventually settled in a small town in Australia. I think he hesitated for a moment. I might need to take some more time to rest. Xia Zhishu paused his actions. He looked at him gently. No rush. The shop is always open. His gaze was filled with such tolerance. It made Luca suddenly feel a bit guilty. He knew Xia Zhishu had shifted the company's focus here, all just to spend time with him, but he never mentioned it, nor did he ever ask when he would be ready to accept his feelings. He was actually lowering his head, fiddling with the petals of the sunflower. I'm feeling much better now. It's just that those nightmares still come back to haunt me from time to time. The chilling coldness, the sting of a whip striking across the back, and the indifferent gaze of Lu Ji. A warm hand gently rested on the back of his hand. The soft voice of Kiki Xiajishi carried a calming strength that put his heart at ease. Look outside the window. He instinctively lifted his head. The sky outside was a clear, vivid blue. A few seagulls leisurely glided past. In the distance, the cheerful laughter of children could be heard. No one here can harm you. He broke into a smile. So you can take your time. Luku felt a sudden sting at the tip of his nose. He suddenly recalled the moment he first arrived at this small town. He stayed indoors for 3 days straight, too afraid to step outside. It was Xia Zishu. Every day, he brought him local delicacies with a creative twist. He patiently explained which streets were safe, and which supermarket had desserts that suited his taste best. How about trying that newly opened dessert shop today? He skillfully shifted the topic. I heard their tiramisu is quite good. He blinked his slightly misty eyes, and nodded in agreement. The dessert shop is located by the seaside, under the white parasol. Leko takes small bites of the tiramisu in front of him. The bitterness of the coffee and the sweetness of the cream meld together on his tongue, making him instinctively squint his eyes. Does it taste good? It's delicious? He nodded his head. It's just that the coffee flavor is a bit mild. Then next time we'll make it ourselves. He gently ruffled his hair. I purchased a coffee machine. It lets you adjust the strength to your liking. Luku suddenly remembered something. He couldn't help but smile. Do you remember the first time I made tiramisu? I mistakenly used salt instead of sugar. It turned out unbelievably awful. I remember Xia Zishu had a smile in his eyes. You stubbornly insisted on finishing it, saying that wasting ingredients was not acceptable. They exchanged a knowing smile. Sunlight streamed across the table, casting a warm golden glow over it. Moments like these happened more and more often. Sometimes it was during a trip to the grocery store when they stumbled upon a childhood snack. Other times it was on a rainy day, curled up on the couch watching an old movie, or simply walking side by side along the beach without saying a word. Over time, Leke realized she no longer looked back as often, no longer waking up in shock from dreams, nor feeling a rush of adrenaline from a familiar silhouette. Heart no longer racing uncontrollably. Xia Zishi suddenly spoke. This time, he didn't call him senior. Instead, he addressed him by his name. Thank you. He froze slightly, then shook his head. No need to thank me. It's not about politeness. He said it with earnest sincerity. I truly appreciate you bringing me here. The sea breeze tousled her hair. Xia Zishu reached out and gently brushed it aside for her. His fingertips stopped just short of her cheek, restrained and pulled back. A deep yet gentle voice of a man called Coco resonated softly. I only wish for you to be happy. In the distance, waves softly lapped against the shore, over and over again, never ceasing, just like how life eventually soothes all wounds, bringing a fresh start. On the day Gu Luoyin was discharged from the hospital, Lu Xiaoyu went out of her way to order the most expensive champagne. The clink of crystal glasses made a crisp sound. At that moment, as she gazed at the bubbles rising in the glass, and listened to Gu Luoyin's gentle words of gratitude, it's thanks to you for taking care of me these past days. Otherwise, I truly wouldn't have known what to do. Lu Xiaoyu wrapped her arm around his, and said with a playful smile, your wedding with brother Luoying should be a grand celebration. Such a perfectly matched couple. It wouldn't be right if the event doesn't cause a sensation in the entire city. Lu Ji's fingers paused for a moment. Suddenly, fragments of memories flashed through their mind. It was a young boy with a face full of shock. He suddenly threw the ring in his hand away. We are brothers. He seemed to remember holding back his emotions. He bent down, picked up the ring, and put it back in his pocket. But now, he instinctively reached for the pocket at his side, only to find it completely empty. Lately, these inexplicable moments of distraction have been occurring more often. It always feels like there's something important that he has forgotten. During the days of preparing for the wedding, Lu Ji moved like a puppet on strings, going along with all the arrangements. When trying on the suit, the tailor offered his compliments. He stood tall and straight. While selecting wedding rings, Lu Xiaoyu excitedly mentioned that these rings were priceless. Even when discussing the wedding process, Gu Luoyin gently and carefully made arrangements. Everything was flawlessly executed. The sunshine on the wedding day was unusually dazzling. Lu Zhisher sat inside the wedding car. His suit was impeccably tailored, but his tie was so tight it nearly took his breath away. He raised his hand and loosened his bow tie. His gaze fell on the swiftly passing scenery outside the car window. In recent days, those fragmented pieces of memory have been appearing in his dreams with increasing frequency. Someone would quietly bring him a cup of coffee while he worked. Someone would stubbornly wait by the door on rainy days, just to hold an umbrella for him. Someone would curl up in his arms late at night, softly whispering for him to stop smoking. It's not good for the body. Everyone said that person was Gu Ruoying, but why did he always feel something was off? The car door was pulled open. The best man's voice brought him back to reality. Mr. Lu, time to pick up the bride. Lu Zhisher stepped out of the car, but his footsteps felt as heavy as lead. Step by step, he walked toward the Gu family's front door. The the sound of laughter around. The blessings felt as if separated by a thick layer of glass, blurred and indistinct. The groom has arrived to pick her up. Amid the playful cheers of the crowd, he bent down and scooped Guluoin, dressed in her pristine white wedding attire, into his arms. The weight in his arms was so light, yet he felt a sharp pain pressing against his heart. As he got into the wedding car, the enclosed space carried a faint hint of perfume in the air. It was an elegant rose scent, sophisticated, yet it inexplicably felt unfamiliar to him. Unfamiliar. Lu Ji suddenly remembered that absurd night. In the darkness, he held the person in his arms. The scent lingering at the tip of his nose was distinctly different. It was a fragrance he knew well and found utterly intoxicating. Luoyin, he suddenly asked, "Did you change your perfume?" Gu Luoyin froze for a moment. She then playfully remarked, "I've always used this one." "What's wrong?" Lu Jishur asked with a slight frown. "It's nothing." Yet the voice in her mind grew louder. Something felt off, everything seemed wrong. The wedding venue was decorated with extravagant luxury. Lu Jishur held Gu Luoyin's hand as they walked up the stage. In their ears rang the passionate and lively voices of the crowd. The groom, "Do you promise to uphold the vows of marriage from this day forward, through poverty or wealth, in sickness and in health, handsome or disheveled, smooth sailing or facing setbacks, willing to love her, comfort her, respect her, and protect her, and commit to this throughout your lives, remaining forever loyal to her?" The entire room suddenly fell silent. In moments of joy, standing there, you felt all the sounds fading away, leaving only a strange thought, relentlessly echoing deep within your soul. Everything is completely wrong. You cannot marry her. The one you are supposed to marry isn't her. It's not Gu Luoyin. Then who could it be? The groom's unrestrained voice pulled her back to reality. Is Mr. Lu perhaps feeling too nervous? Soft whispers had already begun to spread around. What's going on here? Mr. Li's face seems to look quite terrible. Could it be that they remembered it at this moment? I already mentioned it. Back then, Mr. Lu was so fond of that person, deceiving him like this. When the day comes that he fully remembers, what difference would it make then? Isn't that person already gone? They will never return again. What good would it do even if they truly remembered? Gu Luoyin's hand was tightly clutching his sleeve. Her nails were almost digging into his flesh. The host let out an awkward chuckle. He raised his voice and asked once again, "Mr. Lu Jishur, do you take Miss Gu Luoyin as your wife?" Lu Jishur still remained silent. A sharp pain throbbed in his head. It felt as though his brain was being forcibly split apart by someone. Memories he had purposely buried surged back like a tidal wave. He still couldn't recall the face of the boy in the image, yet deep down, he was fully aware that person definitely wasn't Gu Luoyin. His expression turned incredibly grim. The headache was so intense he could barely stand, but he still took the microphone handed to him by the host. His voice was unbearably hoarse. Gu Luoyin tilted her head to look at him. Her eyes were filled with pleading. The words "unwilling" felt like a thunderclap striking the wedding venue. It was as if a bolt of lightning had split through the ceremony. Just as Lu Ji finished speaking, his entire body suddenly fell straight backward, landing heavily onto the red carpet. At that moment, Gu Luoyin let out a scream and rushed forward to try to catch him, but all she managed to grab was his slipping necktie. The scene descended into chaos in an instant. What just happened? Mr. Lu just said he wasn't willing. Did I hear that wrong? Is this wedding still happening or not? It seems deceiving Mr. Lu was never an option. The Gu family is really losing face this time. Just wait until Mr. Lu truly remembers that day. The whispers kept spreading in waves. Gu Luoying stood on the stage. Her nails dug deeply into her palms. She forced herself to muster a smile, taking the microphone from the host. "Ladies and gentlemen." His voice trembled slightly, yet he tried his best to stay composed. Cheese has been overworked recently because of the wedding preparations. His health hasn't been in great condition. The doctor had advised him to take a break long ago, but he didn't want to delay our special day. He insisted on holding the wedding as planned. He paused for a moment. His gaze swept across the crowd below the stage. It was unexpected for him to faint on such an important occasion. Please don't misinterpret what he said earlier. I hope everyone will refrain from making any more reckless remarks. After all, Le Jia and the Gu family have always been united as one. He spoke the last sentence with great weight. His gaze pierced sharply toward the guests who had been gossiping the most. Those individuals immediately fell silent, awkwardly shifting their eyes away. Xiao Yulu jogged onto the stage. Lowering her voice, she demanded to know what was going on. "Wasn't my brother perfectly fine this morning? How would I know?" Wo Luo returned, gritting his teeth in frustration. The smile on his face was almost impossible to maintain. "Hurry and call an ambulance," he turned to the audience, putting on that gentle and composed demeanor again. "Today's wedding will be concluded for now. Thank you all for being here. Once my health recovers, I will reschedule the time." The guests exchanged puzzled looks, but under the escort of the Gu family bodyguards, they had no choice but to leave one after another. After the ambulance sped away, the wedding venue was left in complete disarray, with only a few staff members remaining. Gu Luoyin finally let down his facade. She yanked off the veil, tossed it onto the ground. Why would she suddenly say she's unwilling? She paced back and forth, her high heels pressing down on the scattered petals. Did someone say something to her? Are you sure that before Luke left, she didn't have a chance to say anything to her? Of course not. Lu Xiaoyu's face turned pale as a sheet. His fingers unconsciously twisted at the fabric of his suit pants. Could he possibly remember everything? That sentence felt like a bucket of ice water poured over Gu Luoyin's head. He abruptly came to a halt. His pupils contracted sharply. Impossible. The doctor clearly said the chances of his memory recovery were very slim. But what if it happens? Lu Xiaoyu's voice trembled. Have you forgotten how he treated Luke before? That lunatic would do anything for his own purposes. He vividly remembers it. It was not long after he was first brought back. Out of jealousy for how Lu Ji always treated Luke with kindness, while completely ignoring him every single time, he secretly cursed Luke as a despicable person. But Lu Ji overheard him. He immediately locked him up in a dark room, and kept him there for 2 full days and nights before letting him out. If he happens to think about it again, and they knew everything that had been done to Luke, be quiet. Gu Luo sharply interrupted Lu Xiaoyu's wild thoughts. The priority now is to block any information. Under no circumstances can today's events be leaked. He pulled out his phone. He quickly dialed several numbers. Immediately get in touch with all the major media outlets. Cancel all coverage of today's Le family wedding. And make sure someone is stationed at the hospital. No one is allowed to approach Le Jisher's hospital room. After hanging up the phone, Gu Luoyin took a deep breath and turned to Lu Xiaoyu. You go to the hospital and keep an eye on things. Let me know immediately if anything happens. I will. Lu Xiaoyu's eyes widened in fear. Why does it have to be me? What if he wakes up? Because your last name is Lu. Gu Luoyin let out a near-savage growl. You are his younger brother. No one will stop you, and he won't actually do anything to you. While I need time to deal with this mess. Lu Xiaoyu wanted to argue further, but when faced with Gu Luoyin's fierce gaze, she had no choice but to reluctantly nod her head. Remember, Gu Luoyin firmly grabbed his wrist. Her nails dug deeply into his flesh. If he truly recalled anything, we need to ensure our statements align. It was Luke's own decision to leave. We know absolutely nothing. Got it? Lu Xiaoyu winced in pain, sharply inhaling, but he didn't dare to pull away. He could only nod repeatedly, watching as Lu Xiaoyu's panicked figure hurriedly disappeared. Bruffin finally couldn't hold on any longer. He collapsed onto the scattered support board of the wedding attire. His trembling hands reached for a pack of cigarettes, but no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't light it. The Loji Stone who had been so compliant with him just days ago, the one who had promised to marry him, Loji Stone, actually announced at the wedding that she wasn't willing. If he thought of Lei, Bruffin couldn't bear to think any further. The monitor emitted an ear-piercing alarm. Lu Ji struggled violently on the hospital bed. Cold sweat soaked through the hospital gown. Hold him down, his blood pressure is too high. Administer a sedative. The icy medication flowed into his veins, yet his mind became even clearer. Memories he had deliberately forgotten surged back like a tide, dragging him into an inescapable nightmare. Brother, I don't understand this question. 17-year-old Luke leaned over his desk. The tips of her hair brushed against his arm, carrying a faint scent of gardenia. His fingers holding the pen tightened slightly. The pen tip left a smear of ink on the paper. Even such a simple question eludes you. He heard his own indifferent voice, unable to hold back. His gaze fell on the slight pout of his lips. Can you teach me? He tugged at his sleeve and gave it a little shake, eyes shining brightly like the stars. He suddenly jumped to his feet. The chair scraped loudly against the floor. Looking at the answers by oneself, he practically fled as if in a panic, afraid that staying even a second longer would reveal the swirling desires in his eyes. The scene shifted abruptly. You were smoking again while enjoying yourself. The 20-year-old Luke rushed into the study, snatching the cigarette from her fingertips, extinguishing it in the ashtray. Her cheeks flushed with anger. Raindrops still clung to her eyelashes. What does it have to do with you? She heard herself retort coldly, but couldn't help staring at her moist lips. Why wouldn't it concern me? She reached out to touch her forehead. You had a fever of 39 degrees last night. Still daring to smoke now? His breathing suddenly grew heavier. He abruptly seized his wrist, pressed him against the bookshelf. Leike's voice was frighteningly hoarse. Don't casually touch other men. He stared blankly with wide-open eyes, completely unable to understand why his brother suddenly started acting so strangely. Memories twisted once again. The DNA report has been released. Xiaoyu is actually our biological son. Lefeu's voice echoed through the living room. Leike stood frozen in place, her face pale. She was still holding a freshly prepared fruit platter in her hand. I'll go pack my things. His voice trembled as he spoke. He turned around and hurried upstairs. On a stormy night, he kicked open his door. Inside, he saw a small suitcase already packed. As he tried to escape, his wrist was firmly grasped. He was pushed against the wall. Did you think changing your identity would help you get away from me? Brother, you're hurting me. Her tears fell onto the back of his hand. The heat of it sent a sharp ache through his heart. We are no longer brothers. He lowered his head, moving closer to her lips. His voice was hoarse. From now on, call me by my name. The most unbearable memories came flooding back one after another. Luji, have you lost your mind? We are brothers. Luko, crying, pushed away the engagement ring he handed over. The ring rolled onto the carpet, emitting a dull thud. It wouldn't be the same for long. He hoisted her onto his shoulder and threw her onto the bed, ignoring her cries and screams, as she pounded on his shoulders with her fists. Next week, we will go to the Civil Affairs Bureau. I don't want you to let go of me. His struggles ignited an even deeper violence within him. He gripped her chin, forcing her to lift her head. How have I treated you all these years? Don't you know it deep down in your heart? Why do you keep running away again and again? Because this is wrong, she cried, trembling all over. You are my brother. Be quiet. He fiercely captured her lips in a kiss. He swallowed all her resistance. This jerk of a brother stole Luo Ying's necklace. Lu Xiaoyu's sharp voice rang out. He was pulled into the next dream. Luko was pinned to the ground. The flesh of his index finger was torn and mangled. After losing his memory, he stood coldly in the shadows. It's up to you to decide. As he turned to leave, he heard a faint voice from Luku. In that moment of happiness, that voice carried the trust and reliance he once knew so well. Complete and unwavering trust and dependence. Yet, he closed the door without a backward glance. The final image froze at the wedding scene. I didn't want him to see me like this. Leaving Gu Luowin behind in front of everyone, rushed out of the door like a madman. By the time he reached the airport, all he saw was a plane streaking across the sky. He turned around and suddenly found himself on a beach. Leike stood barefoot in the surf. Xia Zhishu bent down to carefully fasten the straps of his sun-protective clothing. His movements were gentle, as if handling a treasure. Leike screamed at the top of his lungs, but no sound came out. The sea breeze carried fragments of their conversation. What do you feel like eating tonight? The pasta you make, and also the dessert I made. The patient is experiencing arrhythmia. Quick, get the defibrillator ready. Lu Zhishu was convulsing violently on the hospital bed. Tears mixed with cold sweat soaked the pillow. The patient lost emotional control. Increased the dose of the sedative. The medication finally took effect. The struggles of Lu Zhi's stone gradually weakened. In the final moment before descending into darkness, he caught the doctor's voice lowered to a whisper. The scan revealed unusually heightened activity in the hippocampus. It seems like the memories are starting to return. It truly is a miraculous occurrence. The sharp scent of disinfectant stung his nasal cavity. Lu Zhi stared fixedly at the ceiling. Dreams and reality intertwined in his mind. Luko's tear-streaked face, he struggled to push him away. In the end, it was him smiling at another man by the seaside. A timid voice came from the bedside. Lu Xiaoyu stood a couple of steps away, her fingers tightly gripping the strap of her bag. Her knuckles turned pale. How are you feeling? The doctor said your fainting was caused by emotional overreaction. Lu Zhishu slowly turned his head. His gaze landed on her face. Xiaoyu froze in an instant, like a rabbit caught in the gaze of a predator. A cold sweat broke out across her back. Is it fun? He spoke. His voice was terrifyingly hoarse. Xiaoyu forced herself to stay composed, managing to squeeze out a smile. Brother, what are you talking about? I was just worried about you. I remember everything now. Just 7 simple words drained all the color from Yu Xiaoyu's face in an instant. She staggered back a couple of steps, nearly knocking over the 4-stand. I have no idea what you're talking about. His voice trembled. Luca left on his own accord. It has nothing to do with us. Lu Zhisher slowly sat up, pulling the needle out of the back of his hand. Blood droplets slid down his skin. He seemed completely numb to the pain. His gaze was fixed intently on Lu Xiaoyu. Why are you staying so far away from me? Are you that scared of your own brother? Lu Xiaoyu trembled even more violently. He recalled Lu Ji, and how he used to deal with those who had hurt Luku. There was a rich heir who merely touched Luca's hand. By the next day, his entire family had vanished completely. Hey, you just woke up. You should really get some rest. He turned around, ready to leave. Stop right there. But in the next moment, 2 cold words froze him in place like shackles. Lu Ji lifted the blanket and got out of bed. She approached him step by step, closing the distance. Why do you have to keep targeting Luko? Haven't mom and dad already given you all their love? They've done everything to make sure you wouldn't feel wronged, even degrading Luko to the lowest of lows. What about you? Lu Xiaoyu suddenly turned around, letting out an ear-piercing scream in a frenzy. Tears covered his entire face. The carefully applied makeup was completely ruined. His entire body was trembling. I am clearly the one who is your real brother. But what about you? In your eyes, there's only Luku. Lu Zhisher frowned. What nonsense are you talking about? I rambled on as Xiaoyu gave a bitter smile. Do you remember the first day I came back? I cautiously called you brother, yet you wouldn't even glance at me, not sparing me a single look. Luko merely sneezed once, and you immediately took off your jacket for him. I tried desperately to win your favor. But what about you? I had a fever of 102 degrees, yet you were out buying cake for Luku. It was just a small scrape on his finger. You called an entire medical team overnight. Only when you're happy do I matter as your brother. He's just an unwanted illegitimate child. Who knows where that despicable person came from to take someone else's place? What gives you the right? Accompanied by a sharp cracking sound, Lu Ji delivered a fierce slap. The man's pale cheek instantly swelled up dramatically. So that's why you keep targeting him. Xiaoyu covered her face, staggering back a couple of steps, laughing hysterically. I hate him. Why does he, a fraud, deserve all the love that should have come from my own brother? Why is it that now I'm back, you still choose to revolve around him? And do you know what the most ridiculous part is? The so-called care from the parents you talk about is only out of guilt, and it was also to silence those people outside, afraid of what others might say, treating Yang Zi better than their own biological son. They have always been concerned about saving face. Lu Ji paused for a moment, then suddenly broke into a smile. That smile was chillingly cold. Lu Xiaoyu, listen carefully. He spoke each word clearly and deliberately. I don't care how mom and dad treat you, but with me, you can't even compare to a single strand of Luca's hair. This sentence completely shattered Lu Xiaoyu. He collapsed onto the ground. His makeup was smeared, making him look like a clown. So what? What does it matter if he can't compare? I am the true heir of the Lu family, the rightful young master, he muttered to himself. Luko has already decided to leave you behind. He would rather stay far away from you. He has no desire to be with you. Don't you understand yet? Lu Ji's pupils suddenly contracted. It felt as if his heart had been viciously stabbed. Get out, Lu Xiaoyu said, covering her face. She scrambled out of the hospital room in a panic, but she collided with Li's father, who had hurried over after hearing the news, at the door. Li's mother asked, Xiaoyu, what happened? Li's mother wanted to go and help him up. Don't touch me. Lu Xiaoyu shook off his hand while crying and shouting, then ran off into the distance. Li's father frowned as he stepped into the hospital room. What happened to your younger brother? I've already told you so many times. Xiaoyu is your biological brother. You should treat him a little better. But Lu Zhisher, who had sat back down on the hospital bed, seemed completely indifferent. He slowly lifted his head. His gaze was chilling to the bone. Mom, Dad, it's time we settle some scores. In the grand living room of the Lu family villa, the suitcase was violently thrown to the ground. It landed with a heavy thud. Lu Zhisher, you despicable beast. Lu Fu's face turned ashen with anger. Pointing at the man seated on the sofa, she unleashed a torrent of curses. All for the sake of a man. You even dared to kick your own parents out of the house. Lu Ji sat with his legs crossed, dressed sharply in a suit and tie. His fingertips gently tapped the armrest of the sofa. His gaze was as cold as if he were looking at a stranger. You're getting older. The countryside is more suitable for retirement. His tone was calm, yet every word cut like a knife. As for the business, rest assured, I will handle it very well. Lumu collapsed onto the ground, wailing in despair. What a sin! How could our family raise someone as ungrateful as you? What kind of spell has that man cast on you, that you would disregard all sense of family and morality? In the corner, Lu Xiaoyu curled up on a single-seater sofa. Her face was as pale as a sheet. Her eyes were vacant and unfocused. Her exposed arms were covered in hideous whip marks. They looked as though they had been lashed by fine wire. The wound has already scabbed over, yet it still looks startlingly gruesome. The door was suddenly pushed open. Gu Luoyin stepped inside, his leather shoes clicking on the floor. When he saw this scene, he instantly froze in place. The furious curses of Yu's father and mother, the injuries covering Yu Xiaoyu's body, and the utterly indifferent expression on Yu Zhisher's face, all of it made him instinctively want to turn around and run away. But thinking about the blows the story has suffered these past few days, the stock price has plummeted. Partners have been withdrawing their investments one after another. He had no choice but to brace himself. As he stepped forward, he called out softly. His eyes instantly turned red. I heard that your parents are planning to move to the countryside. Should I arrange for someone to help? Young Master Gu has finally decided to make an appearance. Lu Ji let out a soft chuckle, but his gaze remained chillingly cold. I thought you planned to hide away. Forever. Gu Luoying bit her lip, looking pitiful as she stepped forward, trying to grab his hand. It was all just a misunderstanding before. A sharp slap echoed, and a clear handprint immediately appeared on his face, the corners of his lips stained with specks of red. Misunderstanding. He stood up, step by step, closing in on him. It was a misunderstanding that you ordered someone to put thumbtacks in Coco's shoes. Taking him shopping with you and then tormenting him was also a misunderstanding. It was said that locking him in the freezer was a misunderstanding too. Gu Luoyin's face turned deathly pale. Tears streamed down uncontrollably. At that time, I really thought he was targeting me, and I was so deeply in love with you. That's why I felt jealous. But now, he's already gone. Geez, can we start over again? This is a union tied by the story. It benefits both families. Lu Ji suddenly clenched his neck tightly. The force was so strong that his knuckles turned pale. Gu Luoyin widened his eyes in terror. His hands desperately slapped at his arms, but he couldn't move him at all. You think you're worthy of mentioning him? His voice was so soft it sounded like a whisper. Violence surged beneath his eyes. You're not even worthy to carry his shoes. Right when Gu Luoyin's vision began to blur, and he was on the verge of suffocating, Lu Ji suddenly let go, and ruthlessly slammed him to the ground. Gu Luoyin curled up, coughing uncontrollably. His throat burned with searing pain. I dragged him down to the basement. Lu Ji's voice grew even colder. It's not about enjoying locking people up. Then go on in. Gu Luo's pupils constricted sharply. Trembling, she crawled backward. She moved away from Laji Stone, and let out a scream. I'm pregnant. The entire living room fell into a dead silence. Father Lu and Mother Lo looked at her stomach in shock. Even Lu Xiaoyu's unfocused gaze slightly sharpened. Lu Ji squinted his eyes. His voice was incredibly dangerous. What did you say? I am pregnant with your child. Gu Luoyin clutched her neck. Her voice was hoarse. Yes, exactly. That night, he didn't finish his sentence, but everyone knew which night he was referring to. During the time Lu Ji had lost his memory, that absurd night, Lu Zhisher suddenly broke into a smile. The smile sent shivers down Gu Luo's spine. Very well, he calmly remarked, adjusting his cuffs with deliberate care. Then wait until the child is born and conduct a paternity test. Gu Luoyin trembled all over. Even if you don't believe me, I believe in you. Lu Zhisher leaned down and gripped her chin. Send her back to the Gu family. Assign someone to keep watch around the clock. If he dares to terminate the pregnancy, he flung the person aside with force. Turning back, his eyes were filled with a chilling menace. Then I don't mind perishing along with the story. Gu Luo collapsed weakly onto the ground. She finally realized what kind of demon she had provoked. The glass window of the VIP ward was being battered by the heavy rain, producing an aggravating noise. When Lu Zhisher approached, the two bodyguards immediately straightened their backs. He directly pushed open the door. Lu Xiaoyu was sitting by the window, lost in thought. Hearing the noise, she jolted suddenly. The cup in her hand almost slipped to the floor. Brother, he stammered as he scrambled to his feet. His eyes darted away, avoiding contact. Let me pour some hot water for Brother Luoyin. Lu Zhisher let out a cold laugh. His gaze swept over the trembling fingers. What is there to fear? Lu Xiaoyu shook her head frantically, her back pressed firmly against the wall, wishing she could curl herself into a ball. Gu Luoyin, lying on the hospital bed, had been pretending to sleep. Upon hearing the noise, she immediately opened her eyes. Then, noticing Lu Zhisher's grim expression, she instinctively shrank further into the blanket, but still forced herself to hold on, and managed a gentle smile. When did you come to see me? ever since being forcibly admitted to this private hospital 3 days ago. He has been monitored around the clock like a prisoner. Did you find anything? Lu Ji didn't even look at him. She directly asked the bodyguard at the door. Mr. Gu has been very cooperative these 3 days. It was just that the bodyguard handed over a tablet. This morning, he secretly contacted someone from the Gu family. Gu Luoyin's face turned pale instantly. I just asked for some fresh clothes to be sent from home. Lu Ji finally turned his gaze toward him. His eyes were as cold as if he were staring at a lifeless object. He unbuttoned his suit jacket and took a seat. His long legs crossed elegantly. Is there any news from France? This question was directed at the assistant who had followed him in. Not yet. The assistant's forehead was beading with sweat. Mr. Lu was last seen on surveillance footage at Charles de Gaulle Airport, and then it was as if they vanished from the face of the earth. It seems someone believed they had erased the useless individual. The glass shattered against the wall with an explosive crash. It sent a shiver through everyone present. Lu Zhisher loosened his tie slightly. The oppressive air of violence made it hard to breathe. Keep investigating. Turn every Chinese community in France upside down. After the assistant hurriedly exited, only the ticking of the monitor remained in the hospital room. Did you come over today for something specific? Gu Luoying forced a stiff smile. She was the first to break the silence. Lu Zhisher remained silent. He walked straight up to her, grabbed her long hair in one swift motion, and dragged her entirely off the bed. It hurts so much, Lu Zhisher. What are you doing? Gu Luoyin's tears immediately welled up from the pain. Her scalp felt like it was being torn apart. He stumbled awkwardly to the ground. Lifting his head, he met Lu Zhisher's icy gaze. His heart sank abruptly. Intense humiliation and anger gave way to boundless fear. Zhisher, what's wrong with you? His voice trembled, yet he still tried to feign composure. Is there something wrong with the child? Lu Zhisher's lips curled into a faint smile. The gaze was chillingly cold. It's nothing. Just found something interesting. Wanted to invite Mr. Gu to take a look together. He let go of her hair, then turned and walked toward the TV in the hospital room, connected his phone to it. Broing collapsed onto the ground, staring at the TV screen as it lit up. A growing sense of foreboding took hold. This is God. His voice abruptly stopped. The scene vividly depicted the setting of his birthday party. He saw himself gracefully walking toward Lu Ku, feigning casual conversation, then using the motion of turning around to slip the blue diamond necklace into Lu Ku's pocket. That's not true. Gu Luoyin's expression shifted slightly, looking somewhat pitifully. I can explain when it comes to Lu Ji, but Lu Ji only stared at the surveillance footage with a cold expression. Not a single word was uttered. The scene continued to play. Lu Ku was pinned to the ground by the bodyguards for a search. Lu Xiaoyu stood tall, holding up the necklace with an air of smugness. Lu Ku was dragged toward the guest room. A lecherous beggar followed him inside. Gu Luo trembled all over, dared to glance at Li's expression at that moment. The very next second, he struggled to lunge forward, trying to turn off the TV. No, stop playing it. Stop it, Lu Ji. Shirka yanked his hair forcefully. Fine strands of his hair snapped from the roots. His other hand gripped his wrist tightly. The strength was so intense it felt like it could crush his bones. Why the rush? His voice was soft, yet it sent chills down one's spine. The real show is just about to begin. He stood there, watching helplessly. A muffled groan from the beggar came through the scene. Right after that, Lu Ku stumbled and bolted out of the room. In a panic, she rushed into Lu Zhisher's room without thinking. It wasn't until much later. No one came out from inside, until he eventually appeared on the screen. Following closely, the television abruptly played a sharp and clear sound snap. It was Gu Luoyin slapping Lu Ku hard across the face. Why act so shamelessly? Still trying to seduce him, his sharp voice echoed through the hospital room. Hurry up and bring him back to the Lu family. The moment the video ended, the hospital room fell into a dead silence. Gu Luoyin trembled all over. His scalp ached from being yanked. The faint sound of hair strands snapping was clearly audible. His eyes were rimmed with red. Fingers tightly clung to Lu Zhisher's arm. This isn't true. The video has been edited. Someone is trying to frame me. Lu Zhisher sneered coldly. The grip in his hand intensified. Are you implying that I framed you on purpose? It hurts so much. Jeez. Stop. Gu Luoyin lifted her head in pain. Tears rolled down her cheeks. I was wrong. I truly realize my mistake now. I'm just so terrified of losing you. Her hands trembled as she reached for Lu Chi's sleeve. Cheese, for the sake of the child, please, forgive me this one time. The child Lacheese suddenly let go of her hair and grabbed her chin tightly. When did this happen? Do you think sleeping next to me would automatically make you pregnant? Guluoyin's pupils constricted sharply. No, it wasn't that night. That night, I clearly only encountered one person. While enjoying myself, I pushed his face away. I was just a little tipsy. I wasn't out of my mind. No, it wasn't. So we really did end up together. Guluoyin shook his head furiously. Tears streamed all over his face. I can't deny it. You cannot stand up, Le Jisher. He leisurely adjusted his cuffs. Since you're insisting that you're carrying my child, then let's cut it out and test it. This sentence struck Guluoyin like a bolt of lightning. He suddenly rushed to the bedside and pressed the call button, screaming in terror. Help! Someone's trying to kill. Save it. Le Jisher kicked the call button away. This hospital belongs to Lu TV. He leaned in closer, his eyes churning with a terrifying storm. Guluoyin, I've uncovered a lot of things about you. You think I don't know what you've been up to all these years? You had someone follow Coco. You tampered with his car. I just didn't expect that the one driving out that day would be me. So what? Guluoyin completely broke down. He hysterically tore off the hospital gown. The scar on the collarbone is visible. He's nothing but a fraud. What makes him deserving of your love? How am I, the young master of the Gu family, any less than him? This scar is from when you pushed me down at the age of 10. I've liked you since that moment. For all these years, I've been following behind you. Can't you see it? Why is that? You only have eyes for him. Lu Jisher's gaze was as cold as ice. Because in my eyes, you can't even compare to a single strand of Coco's hair. Ignoring Ruoying, you simply don't exist in my eyes. Ha, not in your eyes. Guluoyin suddenly burst into maniacal laughter. So what does that even matter? Lu Jisher, you and I are both just pitiable souls. Even Luku doesn't love you. Isn't it true, if I'm not mistaken? The person you're constantly thinking about these days is currently lying in another man's arms. Compared to you, Xiaxi is much gentler. This remark completely ignited Le Jisher's fury. He grabbed Guluoyin's neck tightly and pinned him against the wall. Say it again. I said. Guluoyin's face turned red, yet he was still smiling. Luku doesn't want to. He resents you deeply. He can't wait to stay as far away from you as possible. He only wants to escape from you. What do all these years with him even mean? He would rather elope with that person named Xiaxishu than stay by your side. Lu Ji's hand veins bulged prominently. Just as Guluoyin was about to suffocate, the door of the hospital room was suddenly slammed open. Mr. Lu has found a lead. The assistant rushed in, holding up a tablet. Displayed on it was a surveillance screenshot from Charles de Gaulle Airport. Behind Luko was Xiaxishi, clearly pushing a luggage cart. Lu Jisher released Guluoyin. He collapsed to the ground like a ragdoll, gasping heavily for air. Check the flight records. Lu Jisher's voice was unnervingly calm. I need to know where they went in the end. The assistant nervously swallowed. It has already been discovered. They purchased tickets to the United States. However, it's reported that someone captured footage at Los Angeles International Airport, showing Xia Jishi boarding the plane alone. Mr. Lu is nowhere to be found, so it's uncertain if Mr. Lu is still in the United States, or perhaps he has gone somewhere else. Lu Jisher suddenly clenched his fist tightly. His nails dug deep into his palm as he closed his eyes. Guluoyin let out a hoarse laugh. You totally deserve it, Rock of Joy. You had it coming, Rock of Joy. There's no chance. Guluoyin, looking slightly unhinged, turned around and headed toward the bodyguard by the door, leaving behind one final remark, and making sure Lu Xiaoyu was sent away too, to stay with his parents. As for him, he needed to start preparing the operating room now, because today, they had to figure out who the father of that illegitimate child was. The sunshine in Australia is always exceptionally generous. Lei Kei walked barefoot on the beach. Fine white sand spilled through his toes. Waves occasionally rolled in, gently brushing against his ankles. He was carrying freshly bought daisies in his hand. The golden petals shimmered under the sunlight. Slow down, came the voice of Xiajishi from behind, with a hint of amused helplessness. He was holding 2 ice creams in his hand. He was quickly catching up. The sea breeze lifted the hem of his shirt, revealing his lean waistline. If we go any slower, the ice cream will melt. Leko turned around, deliberately walking backward. She made a funny face at him. Xiaji took a few quick steps to catch up with him, handing the ice cream over. Then at least wait for me. Vanilla ice cream melts softly on the tip of the tongue. Its sweetness makes one squint with delight. Luka sneaks a glance at the man beside her. She notices he is intently gazing at the horizon. His eyelashes catch the sunlight, glowing with a golden edge. Over the past 3 months, Xia Zishi has always quietly stayed by her side, never crossing boundaries, and yet never straying too far away, claiming to feel nothing at all. That's not real. Had enough of looking, he suddenly turned his head. A mischievous glint flickered in his eyes. Luko felt her ears grow warm. She hurriedly turned her face away. Who's looking at you? I'm watching the seagulls. Oh, is that so? Xia Zishi drawled out her tone, blinked her eyes. It's because that seagull looks a lot like me. Xia Zishu. He angrily attempted to snatch the ice cream from his hand, but it was easily dodged by him. The two of them chased each other on the beach. In the end, Luko's foot slipped. She fell entirely into his arms. The scent of mint filled the air. Willingly threw herself into his embrace. That's probably not a good idea. Xia Zishu caught her steadily. A hint of laughter was in her voice. Luko looked up, just about to argue back, and found herself meeting her gentle gaze. The sea breeze suddenly fell silent. All that could be heard was the sound of their heartbeats. The ice cream is going to melt, she muttered softly. Xia Zishi chuckled lightly. Let her go back home. I bought some steak. Steak again. Luko wrinkled her nose. Chef Xia only knows how to make this dish. This Chinese palate of mine has already had steak for several days in a row. Today is different. She gave a secretive wink, and said she had mastered a new sauce recipe. Their home is a small white cottage by the sea. The front yard is filled with daisies. The first time Xia Zishu brought her here, he said. The meaning of daisies is love hidden deep in the heart. The scent of melting butter wafted from the kitchen. Luka leaned against the counter, watching Xia Zishu wearing an apron and frying steak. Her movements were smooth and practiced. The sleeves of her shirt were rolled up to her elbows, revealing her well-defined forearms. Take a small piece and try it. Bring it close to his mouth. Luku opened his mouth and took a bite. His eyes lit up instantly. I have to say, this tastes especially good today. That's great. Xiaoji let out a sigh of relief. After practicing more than 10 times, finally managed to succeed. He widened his eyes over a dozen times. When are you planning to? While you were taking a nap. He spoke in a casual and understated manner, turning around to grab the red wine. Ingredients from abroad are indeed tricky to handle. It's hard to recreate the flavors from back home. All that's left is steak. It's healthy and easy to prepare, but it's not ideal to keep serving you the same steak all the time. The sunset streamed through the window, casting a gentle glow on his profile. Leko suddenly felt a lump in his throat. No one had ever practiced a dish 10 times just for him, practicing over a dozen times. After dinner, they sat on the porch gazing at the stars. Xia Zishi spoke up all of a sudden. A dessert shop is going up for sale next week. Do you want to check it out? Really? Leko straightened up in surprise. Where is it? Downtown, not far from the seaside. He handed him a document. The shop owner is Chinese. There was an issue back home that he needed to return and handle, so he sold it off in a hurry. All the equipment is in excellent condition. He flipped through the document. Suddenly, it dawned on him. What? You had already started preparing. Xiaoji smiled faintly, without denying it. The night breeze swept gently through the daisy field, carrying a faint floral fragrance. Lei subtly shifted her head closer to his side, resting it lightly on his shoulder. Summer's delight, huh? I truly, deeply appreciate having you in my life. He reached out and softly ruffled the top of her hair, his voice tender and calm. Coco, I'm also really happy to share the moments to come with you, always staying by your side. Luko closed his eyes. This time, he finally felt those nightmare-like memories of the past could truly and completely become history. The sunlight of Australia poured through the dessert shop's glass window. Luko's fingers gently brushed across the workstation, the smooth surface of the marble countertop. My last name is Gu. You can just call me Mr. Gu. These devices were all replaced just last month. The shop owner, Mr. Gu, adjusted his glasses slightly. If it weren't for trouble at home, I really wouldn't have the heart to sell it. Xia Zishu stood quietly behind Luku, naturally taking the brochure from his hand. You mentioned the shop specializes in French desserts. I studied in Paris for 3 years. Mr. Gu gave a small smile, suddenly noticing the stiffness in Luka's posture. This gentleman, what's wrong with you? Luka snapped back to reality, forced a faint smile. It's nothing, just that you mentioned your last name is Gu. That's right. Not sure if you've heard about the story of this life. The shop owner let out a sigh. Though I'm just a distant branch of the family, I've loved wandering around since I was a kid. Xia Jishu's gaze turned sharp instantly. Are you in such a rush to return to the country? Did something happen to the Gu family? Mr. Gu hesitated for a moment. Suddenly, as if he had found someone to confide in, he pulled out a chair. Have a seat. I'll make you some coffee. As the coffee machine buzzed softly, his voice grew deeper. The Gu family has gotten involved with a lunatic this time. Luca's fingertips absent-mindedly traced circles along the rim of the cup. My cousin, Gulu Oin. Mr. Gu gave a bitter smile. Was sent to the operating table by that person from the Lu family, claiming it was to perform a paternity test through surgery. The coffee cup suddenly slipped from Luca's hand. Brown liquid splattered across the white tiles. Sorry, it wasn't intentional. He hurriedly crouched down to clean it up, but was stopped by Xia Zixue. I approached and gently held her trembling hand. He handed her a tissue. Mr. Gu continued speaking. That lunatic discovered my cousin's fake pregnancy and forcibly made her undergo surgery. Now the person has already. He gestured toward his temple. Something went wrong here. In the psychiatric hospital, rambling nonsense all day. A seagull outside the window suddenly let out a sharp cry. Luca stared at his reflection imprinted in the coffee. In a daze, he seemed to see his past self trembling with fear. I feel like Lu Zhisher has truly lost his mind. Mr. Gu shook his head. It's said to be all for a man. He didn't even care about his own company anymore. Lu Zhisher's stock price is plummeting now, yet he still sent his parents and his younger brother to a mental hospital. A mental hospital. Xia Zishu frowned. They called it a countryside retreat. But everyone knows what that retreat center is really for. Mr. Gu lowered his voice. Once normal people go in, hardly anyone comes out with their mind completely intact. Luca's expression grew increasingly grim. She suddenly stood up. I need to use the restroom. The mirror in the restroom reflected her pale face. When the cold water splashed onto her face, she realized she had been crying, not for the moments of happiness, but for the naive belief that she could ever escape. Her foolish self. Just a complete lunatic. What if one day he truly disregarded everything and came after her? What would he do then? A soft knock came from outside the door. Coco Xiaoji's voice was gentle yet firm. Are you doing okay? May I stay by your side? He took a deep breath. He opened the door and found himself colliding into his embrace. The scent of mint enveloped him. It brought a sense of comfort. I'm fine, he murmured gloomily. I just didn't expect it to turn out this way. I heard about how their story ended. Although they later changed because of Lu Xiaoyu's attitude toward me, the past 20 years, they truly did treat me as if I were their biological son, and cared for me with genuine affection. His lower body leaned slightly as he supported his back. But they are not deserving of your sympathy. During those 20 years, Your Excellence also brought them plenty of pride and recognition outside. You don't owe them anything. So are you planning to purchase this store now? Leko lifted his gaze and looked into his worried eyes. Sunlight streamed down from behind him. It seemed to outline him with a golden glow. Oh, he suddenly smiled. His eyes grew even more resolute. I don't want to run away anymore. Even if this might lead him to discover where I am, I still refuse to hide any longer. I am not the one in the wrong. And now, I have you by my side. Isn't it true? When returning to the main hall, Mr. Gu was organizing his documents. Have you made up your mind? He forced himself to ask with energy. Xiaji wrapped his arm around Luca's shoulder. We made the purchase. However, this amount exceeds the quoted price by 20. The condition is that you must never bring it up after returning to the country. Who is the buyer? Mr. Gu was momentarily stunned. Searched for the contract, looked at Lu Ku's signature, suddenly started to laugh. It seems my confidant today is quite unique. But don't worry, forgetting is what I do best. The morning sunlight filtered through the sheer curtains into the bedroom. Luca stretched lazily. The aroma of freshly baked bread lingered around his nose. He walked barefoot into the kitchen, wrapping his arms around Xia Zixi from behind while she was cooking. Good night. He gently nudged against his back. Why are you up so early today? Xia Zixu turned around, planted a kiss on his forehead. We had an appointment with the photographer today. Remember, it's for taking promotional photos for your dessert shop. Luku only then recalled the important plans for today. The dessert shop bought 3 months ago has finally finished its renovations. It's set to officially open tomorrow. He had been together with Xia Zixu for 3 months already. The phone suddenly started vibrating. It was a message from Mr. Gu, who had added him as a friend back then. He casually tapped to open it. His smile froze for a split second. Lu Zhisher somehow found out your address, but you clearly understood. Due to special circumstances, Lu Jia was completely unable to leave the country, so he went to great lengths to assume someone else's identity, and purchased a plane ticket, getting ready to fly to your place today. However, he somewhat underestimated the Gu family. He intends to fight the Gu family to the bitter end. This completely infuriated the elder in my family. He teamed teamed up with several people who had been oppressed by the Lu family. They gathered a significant amount of evidence against Lu Zhisher, including 7 charges such as illegal detention and intentional harm. There's a high chance he will be sentenced to life imprisonment. He initially kept struggling. He even knelt and begged the police to let him leave the country. Just one glance at you. It's absolutely impossible to let him go free. So he's already been taken to the station. Mr. Lu, you can rest assured now. In the accompanying news photo, Lu Zhisher is being restrained by the police. His eyes are wildly fixated on the direction of the boarding gate. The handcuffs on his wrists gleam with a cold light. What's wrong? Xia Zishu noticed something unusual about him. Leaning in, he quietly asked him. Luca handed the phone to him. Unexpectedly, all he felt was a sense of relief. Without any trace of emotion, Xia Zishu quickly skimmed through the messages, gently held his hand. Do you want to call off today's shoot? Why would we call it off? Luca shook his head with a smile. Our new chapter has only just begun. He stood on tiptoe and gently kissed her chin. Wait for me while I go change my clothes. Weren't we supposed to go to the beach to take photos? The daisies at the flower shop near the beach are in full bloom. Luca wore a casual outfit in a soft yellow shade. Barefoot, she stepped into the waves. Xia Zhishi stood a short distance away, holding up the camera, capturing every smile of hers. Coco finished the last set of photos. She unexpectedly put down her camera. A hint of nervousness flickered in her eyes. Could you come with me to a place? She led her to a rocky area at the far end of the beach. Luku was surprised to discover a white flower arch had been set up here at some unknown time. It was adorned with blooming daisies. She felt her heart pounding rapidly in her chest, like a soft drum being lightly tapped, reminding her of the emotions surging within her. Xia Zishi, what are you doing? Before he could finish his sentence, Xia Zhishi had already dropped to one knee. She pulled out a diamond ring from her pocket. Luca's voice trembled slightly with nervousness, yet his eyes were filled with determination. Are you willing? I am willing. Luca didn't wait for him to finish. She threw herself into his arms. Her tears soaked his shirt. Xia Zhishi fumbled nervously as she tried to put the ring on his finger. In her nervousness, she almost slipped it onto the wrong finger. Wait, Coco, I haven't finished speaking yet. No matter what you say, I am willing to accept it all. Luca buried her face in the crook of his neck. Warm tears rolled down from her eyes. I've always been so grateful for your presence by my side, from the days back in our home country to where we are now. I think I've finally made up my mind. Perhaps it was decided a long time ago that I would be with you forever. So this moment today is something I've been looking forward to for a long time. The sea breeze carried the sound of distant church bells. Xia Ji, she lifted her face with joy and gently kissed her lips. That evening, Luku updated the dessert shop's social media account. Tomorrow the dessert shop will officially open. Its name is Marry Me. The accompanying image shows the silhouette of two people embracing under the sunset, and a close-up of a ring shimmering softly. The comments section was instantly flooded with blessings. One particular comment stood out, saying congratulations, congratulations. This shop will become the sweetest place in all of Australia. If I get the chance, I will definitely go and taste it in person. Mr. Gula smiled as he set down his phone and looked towards Xiaozishi, who was in the kitchen, experimenting with new dessert recipes. While the moonlight streamed in through the window, it outlined his silhouette with a silver edge. Everything from the past has completely faded away, and now he has embraced a future that truly belongs to him.